Disclaimer audio only. I do not own God of War Ragnarok or its characters in any way. I'm just a guy who made a fan game about it, so don't take it seriously. Hello, and welcome to another video. So today I am going to be showcasing a map that I made. So God of War Ragnarok came out and I didn't have any money, and I watched Corey Kindred play it, thought it was really interesting. I've never really been a God of War fan until I really watched his gameplay, and since I don't have $60 on me, and plus I noticed that it was a single player game, I wonder how the game was turned out if it was multiplayer. So I decided to recreate it in Fortnite. It's because there's been some map recreations I made, some have been other games, like I did with my Ghost Simulator game and etc. And I thought it'd be worth a shot. And plus, it's very possible, because if you pay attention to the sword swing animations on the melee device, you'll notice that if you compare the animations to the Leviathan X swing animation in God of War Ragnarok, it's very similar. So I'm not going to spend too much time talking, and let's get into it. Now here you'll be given two options. Well, you have to pick both those options anyways. Character selection. Now in God of War Ragnarok, you would be able to play as both as Kratos and Atreus, but those will be in specific missions that would require those characters. So in this one, you have the option to choose whichever one in any mission. So you can pick Kratos, which you would get a sword. Well, since there is no axe melee weapons, I just did with basic sword and signal remote D, and I'll explain what that's about. So you change to Kratos, right? And then you're given the sword, Leviathan sword, since obviously there is no axe melee weapons in Fortnite yet, and it'd just be easier to name it a Leviathan sword instead of a Leviathan axe, since it wouldn't make sense as a sword. Now basically, it's just basic, and there isn't really much. Although this is just like a beta version, this isn't a full release. But one thing I would like to get into is adding another sword, which is like, you know how Kratos has like the Blades of Chaos, right? Which is like two chains with like so many swords or whatever you want to call it on the end of it, and he used that as weapons to swing around. And I'm gonna do my own version of that weapon. It'll basically just be more quick. I'll try to figure something out. But for now, it's just the Leviathan sword to deal with. And maybe in a later mission of a future mission, because this is gonna be multiple mission map, since there's story mode. And now moving on to the next thing, the signal remote. You know how Kratos has the Spartan Rage ability, where basically he doesn't really drop his weapons, but he just does, so he switches to only using his fists, and whenever he punches, it gets this fiery effect when he hits something. Basically, he just goes berserk and starts punching the crap out of any enemy in sight. And I have my own version of that. So the signal remote, if you enable it, whenever you're given it, you will glow red and you will do a slightly more damage, kind of like in the actual game. Now Spartan Rage wasn't invented in God of War Ragnarok. It was dated to the God of War game in 2018, probably. I think I haven't really seen any gameplay of that, but I know it originated in that game. I think. maybe it was. I'm not really knowledgeable on this type of thing, but I think we can move on to Atreus since I explained Kratos a little bit. Now Atreus has definitely a much larger arsenal, and if you have seen gameplay where you play as Atreus, you will know that he has some varieties of different arrows to use for his bow, and also that he can swing around his bow like a melee weapon. So I have a sword, which I think I'll just rename to Atreus' dagger, even though he doesn't have a dagger in the game, I don't think. It'll just make more sense as a sword and not just a bow you swing at people with. So I'll eventually or somewhat rename this to something different. But right now it's Atreus' bow. Now his is a bit similar to Kratos. It's kind of just like a normal sword. Except if you've probably seen the gameplay, I'm unsure about this, but I'm pretty sure Atreus doesn't have the parry. Cannot parry attacks with his bow. Well, he does, but he doesn't really use his bow. I'm pretty sure. So for now, I just gave him the dodge ability instead of the block and dodge like Kratos. And now he can use different varieties of bows to attack enemies with. And he can choose whichever one he wants to use in a certain situation. Now, for now, with this one, we'll switch back to Kratos for the gameplay. Now, whenever you enter, you'll spawn in this boat, and you notice that it's a big boat, probably could fill like a whole squad, like 1 or 2 squads of players, and you cannot leave the boat. Because we have to go down the river, or whatever you want to call this, and reach the small area down there that you see. You start the story mode. Right now there isn't any dialogue, but I'll probably add some dialogue when you start up the story mode. But right now it's just, the boat's just moving down there, and we've reached our destination. We'll be able to move freely. Now let's just wait a bit, this takes a while, because I want you to really embrace the nature. Now don't mind these stone walls, just there. Now we move on, there's some trees, plants or whatever, and now you see this button right here. This has nothing to do with the story mode, but this is if you're working alone and you don't have a friend or anyone to help you, assist you in the story mode when you play this game. So if you want assistance, you can spawn in a Atreus bot to help fight alongside you. So he will spawn, and it'll be in the form of this NPC right here. You click to talk to him, and he's already hired, so you don't have to enable it. And you're free to dismiss it, so he's no longer hired. But if you want to, if you want him to help you, you just hire him back. Now you notice that he has a bow. I actually gave him the same bows that the Atreus class that you can pick to be as has, except with a different rarity, much more of a legendary rarity than common or any of those other ones. Now you move alongside, you'll see heal there. That'll probably hint that you'll be coming up against something. Now right now you'll find this basket of food just laying on this altar here. You take the food, it does absolutely nothing but disappear. You look behind you, there will be a couple of enemies you have to fight. Now I gave these enemies relatively enough health that a normal enemy would have in the actual game. And you're free to use whatever abilities you want to fight these enemies, even though the Atreus bot is just overpowered. And if you're struggling to fight these bots, You are free to use this health pack that spawns every maybe 15 seconds and heals 20 health points. Now since the Atreus ball wiped all the enemies in a couple seconds, I am going to restart the game and show you what would happen if you were to not spawn the bot. Now let's go to Kratos again and start it up again. Now, small fact about God of War. Kratos is the demigod son of Zeus. And I'm pretty sure he was just a normal guy until he eventually gained superhuman powers and became the god of war. Just something to keep you interested in this war. Or whatever. Now let's not spawn in the assistant spot and actually move to the area again. But now that we don't have the bot, there's no one to help fight alongside you. Now the bot will be available in certain missions, but probably not all of them, considering what I want to do with this. Now obviously, well, before I spawn in the enemies, I want to say that with this map, it's not gonna really go into the same lore of God of War, Ragnarok, or God of War. It's gonna be its own separate timeline, but using the characters of God of War. And that's how I want this game to go. It'll be like a whole separate timeline, like maybe an alternate universe of God of War. That's how this map is going to go in the direction that I wanted to. Because, obviously, this is not an official map, it's just a fan game. So I cannot guarantee that this stuff happened before or after the actual time of the game. So I'm obviously going to have to make a whole separate version. So now once we take the food, I'm going to fight the enemies again. But I'm going to use Spartan Rage. Now you notice that it does a lot more damage than I did without Spartan Rage. I gave Spartan Rage 10 seconds, since I calculated that's how long it lasts when you actually use it in game. I could be wrong. Now the enemies don't do much damage, only 10 damage to a player. And they're pretty easy to kill if you just dodge at the right time. Now this whirlwind attack, he doesn't actually have this with the Leviathan axe, or in this case the sword. But this is just the beta version. It's not supposed to be the full version, so I'm just testing different abilities and ideas. But something I do want to plan is giving the Leviathan sword the ability to do a ground pound, because as I said in the beginning of the video, I want the blades of chaos in the form of a single sword, like this one here. I'm not planning on changing this Leviathan sword to a hammer instead of a sword to make things a little different. It'll just be the glow effect and the stats. So now once we eventually kill the enemies, this is just about it. Like, I made this yesterday, and I just thinking of new ideas and things like I plan out for this and how I want this to go in a different direction in the future. This is just about it for now. No, this isn't really considered an Easter egg, I don't think. But I feel like I wanted to add a secret in this first area, so I've decided to put a cellar door at the corner of the map right here. I don't think this means anything, since I randomly added this here. It probably means nothing. But it could probably lead to like a secret area where you can fight some more enemies. and probably get something out of it. But this is what I'm working on for now. Now, we haven't went to Atreus' gameplay yet. And I'll talk about how I have made Atreus work in line. Because if you notice, the Leviathan sword does 5 damage with each swing. And if you pay attention to the damage of the bows, it's like 70 damage. Completely outdoes the damage of Kratos. And how I fix this, because obviously you can see 79, 79, 75, 75, depending on the rarity. But the rarity doesn't matter in this case because the damage has to be a little lower, like a lot lower, so it would be a little more equal to Kratos. Because if I just have the normal 79 damage, everyone would be choosing Atreus over Kratos. So it'd be unfair because no one will be using the weaker hero over the stronger one. So I will tell you how this works. So basically, if you just heard that damage amplifier sound, you will know that something is different here. But unlike Kratos, who it increases his damage a little bit, this completely drops it to a quarter of the damage. So the damage is now 19, 19, 20, and 20. See that difference? Now that instead of doing more damage, it does less damage. So it'd be a little more equal with Kratos. And I decided to not make it so you can attack with this bows because you could hurt yourself in the process while this is loading. So it's not ideal to be able to attack with Atreus in this stage yet. So now we start this up and we wait for a bit. Now another fun fact, if you may or may not know, Atreus is actually Loki, but unlike Norse mythology or even the MCU, he's not Thor's brother. He is in fact the son of Kratos in that universe, and he's considered Loki for a couple reasons. But one I like to think about is that Loki, I think in Norse mythology and the MCU, has the ability to transform into different forms, basically like a shapeshifter. Atreus, aka Loki, in the God of War, Ragnarok, has the same ability to transform and shapeshift. But kind of unlike the other versions I've known about, I may be wrong about this, but he actually doesn't just change form, but he takes the abilities of that animal he transforms into. He's transformed into a wolf and a bear, from what I know of. I think that's all he's transformed into so far. And he's gained this ability in God of War Ragnarok and not in the previous game, God of War, made in 2018, which is different from the one, I think, the very first one was in 2005. I may be wrong about that. So now if we move to this area now, we're playing as Atreus, and we can see how this plays out differently. Now once we take this food, the enemies will spawn in. But now we have Atreus, so if you notice, the damage is similar to Kratos' damage, and the main difference is that he doesn't have Spartan Rage, nor does he have a block ability. It's just dodge and lock on, which I keep for every character. And now we're going to use the bows, so you already know this is 19 and the other ones are 20. Now if we shoot, it will do the similar damage, and since it's lower, it'll be more inclined with Kratos, and they're a little more equal. But this is just a mechanical bow, so if we use the stink bow, which works on the zombies, it does damage to them, and we can, and that'll be the difference between both characters, and also that Atreus has less health. So now we can have a different play experience, is that what you call it, which depend. Well, basically, just like God of War Ragnarok, each character is different. They have their own abilities and their own weapons, and depending on which one you choose or which one you play as, temporarily optional or mandatory, it has a different experience depending on who you play as. And that is what makes it unique, because you get to play as different characters and it has a different experience for whatever one you picked. And now this is all obvious to some people, but some people may or may not be aware of it. Now I'm making this video a little bit longer than it should be, so I'm gonna cut it short. I got bored, so I recreated God of War. I'll definitely make updates to this map and update you guys on the news for this. But for now, this is it. I hope you guys have a good day. Stay safe.